Back in 2016, Dark Souls 3 released, and initially it had great reviews and sales numbers. But as the years have gone on, I've slowly seen this game fade away into the background, forgotten by most. Nowadays, all the veteran Souls fans are playing the old classics, like Demon's Souls and Dark Souls 1, and all the new fans are playing Elden Ring, along with the veteran Souls fans too, because, well, it is a pretty good game. Dark Souls 3 exists in a weird state of being too new to be a classic, but too old to be brought up with the newer games, which is a shame because by playing Dark Souls 3 today, you will eventually come to the realization that this game is a tightly crafted masterpiece. One of the first things that stood out to me while playing Dark Souls 3 was its striking visual style. It combines the best elements of both Bloodborne and the earlier Souls games. Sometimes when playing Dark Souls 1, I feel like there's too much dank cave, and those dank caves are still here, but they don't overstay their welcome as much. The first area of the game has this beautiful mountain to gaze at, and then the high wall of Lothric is when you really realize the full potential of the game's atmosphere. Sometimes you'll just be walking, and then you'll look over and see hollow people kneeling before an even more malnourished hollow. Awesome! Now there's a man-beast on 4 legs shooting ice out of his mouth, but I killed him, and now these goblins just carried me to a far-off land with zombie dogs and witches, and now this dude has a cage on his back? Why? No clue. Every single piece of Dark Souls 3 is fantastic at building atmosphere, and although that atmosphere is confusing at times, it's still very distinct. The only part I think falls a little flat in terms of atmosphere is the music. Not the sections that have music, but the sections that lack it. Much like the fantastic soundtracks of Elden Ring and Sekiro are key parts in those games, a notable part of Dark Souls is its lack of a soundtrack in all the levels, other than the hub world and boss fights. There's just no iconic theme for places like the High Wall of Lothric, the Irithyll of the Boreal Valley, or even the Cathedral of the Deep.
Yo! Ah!
It's a mixed bag, because it makes the game a little boring sometimes to go through, but it also puts a tight focus on the combat, which is difficult and rewarding. Lots of moments are enhanced by the lack of music, and lots of moments feel dull because of it. The game becomes a slight bit boring when the music isn't there, but it also makes the moments with music much more powerful. It reminds me of a problem I have with Resident Evil 2 Remake, and to an extent Village N7, where the games chose ambient noise with no personality over an actual soundtrack. In the case of RE2, a whole soundtrack of amazing music was disregarded for no real reason when you consider that it's a remake.
Yo! Ah!
I really enjoy the music that is present in these games, but much like Dark Souls, the composition only really gets to shine in certain areas. When Dark Souls 3 does get to flaunt its music, it does so very well. I just wanted to hear more of it. The boss music has such powerful mood, and the music in Firelink Shrine is fantastic as well, but I just would have liked the game to have a more generous amount of music throughout. As soon as you start Dark Souls 3 and make your misshapen character, the game has a tight focus on bringing you great looping level design with distinct and fun locations. Dark Souls 3 really flaunts its creativity when you're just going through a level for the first time, opening up pathways, only to realize that you're back at the bonfire and just made a new shortcut. The Irithyll of the Boreal Valley is a great location, not just because of its strong imagery and setting, but also because its level design keeps up with that quality too. There's a run of the game where it just keeps hitting you with location after amazing location, and you keep wondering to yourself, can this game get any better? And the crazy part is that it actually does. Anor Londo, Lothric Castle, the Grand Archives, Archdragon Peak, all of these areas are back to back in order near the last half of the game, and they are still just as high quality, if not better than the first handful of areas. The issue though, is that areas like this are still around. I mean, like, come on. Dark Souls 3 had a lot of time to trim off the fat of the Souls series, and so it pains me to see that Dark Souls 3 continues to make a lot of the same mistakes that the first game or even Demon Souls made. Poison swamps aren't a terrible idea, but Dark Souls 3 has one of the worst in the series, with it being a huge open area that also still manages to punish you for exploring it with this goo that both damages you and slows you down to a snail's pace. Now, I'm not sure if you guys caught on to this as well, but I think Miyazaki seems to be a little bit of a fan of poison swamps, and continues to put them in his games no matter what people say. And that's fine and all, but when you're designing an area like this, there's a delicate balance of difficulty and bullshit, and I think the scale got tipped a little too far in bullshit's favor this time. Furthering this, level geometry is still a bit of an issue, and you can also often get locked into taking 3 or 4 hits when you only really deserved 1. In being the final Dark Souls game, I just would have hoped that Dark Souls 3 could have cleared up some of these issues. However, I do think that the improvements that Dark Souls 3 makes are tasteful and respectful without changing up what makes Dark Souls good. You have a focus meter for magic and special attacks that has its own Estus to boot, fast travel between bonfires is right there at the start, Curse doesn't half your HP when you die, the combat is faster and easier to learn but still maintains that Souls challenge, the medium weight roll doesn't suck ass, and everything makes sense. Dark Souls 3 takes advantage of faster Souls combat with its massive weapon variety. It has some of the best character quest lines in the whole series, which are fun, but also somber and melancholic, and its final boss is the best that I or anyone else could have asked for. Let's just talk about the DLC for 1 second. My goodness, is this shit amazing. They did not have to go this hard, but they did anyways. You know, Dark Souls was already done, the game got its money from me, and I was pleased. But they insisted on delivering this quality. I mean, come on, they could have made a doo-doo canyon level, and I still would have been fine with it, but they just had to go above and beyond. The final DLC, The Ring City, ends with you destroying a precious egg, and the world is revealed to be fully converted to ash, with next to nothing left. The world of Dark Souls is coming to a close, both as a franchise and a physical place. The themes of Dark Souls 3 are pretty obvious, but this doesn't make them any less powerful. Regardless, it's just tough to see Dark Souls go, but it was great fun while it lasted. Dark Souls 3 could have easily been a simple retread of the best parts of 1 and 2, without any real thought, but I think the outcome we got is something much more distinct. Dark Souls 3 is a game that is unique by itself, but also pays tasteful homage to the previous games. It doesn't lean too hard on nostalgia, and it serves as a celebration of the series as it slowly burned away into ash. If Dark Souls 4 was announced today, I would be overjoyed, but at the same time, I still think I'm pretty content with the send-off that we got. Wait, what is that? Man, I fucking hate this game.